What's up, everybody? Let me start with something a lot of you may not know about me. I'm an IBEW electrician who spent decades inside fossil fuel power plants, literally turning the wrenches. I've worked on every part of these facilities: the coal yards, the conveyors, the boilers, the steam turbine generators, the cooling towers, control rooms, right up to the aviation lights on the top of the stacks. I know these plants inside and out because I've built them, I've maintained them, and I've had to watch them fail in real time. And that's why I can say this with absolute clarity. You could build every gas and coal plant on the wish list, and it still wouldn't fix the electricity shortage we're running into. Not because fossil fuel power generation is bad, but because it cannot solve the supply-demand crisis we're in. Not on speed, not on cost, not on flexibility, and not on modern reliability. So if you want the truth from someone who has actually lived inside this industry, hit that like, subscribe, and alert bell. Now, let's get into this. Everybody thinks the grid problem is completely political. Politics play a role, but there's another problem, and that is time. Electricity demand is rising today. So data centers, AI, heat waves, electrification. The grid needs new capacity in the next 2 to 5 years. The fossil fuel power plants, they don't exist on that timeline. They take 5 to 10 years to plan, permit, finance, and build, and that's if nothing goes wrong. So by the time a new coal or gas plant gets through environmental review, air permits, interconnection, legal challenges, financing, and construction, that demand spike is already here. And the other part that a lot of people don't hear, just getting the steam turbine generator on the project, it can take 5 to 7 years. They're not sitting on a shelf. So think about this. Even if you approved and started building a fossil fuel power plant tomorrow, the turbine that produces the electricity wouldn't show up until 2030 or 2031. Fossil plants, maybe they solve the 2030s problem, but our supply-demand crisis hits in 2027, maybe sooner. So you can't fix this decade's problem with next decade's infrastructure. And then there's a cost issue. Modern gas plants routinely cost upwards of $1 billion to build. Coal is even worse, and nobody wants to finance coal. Now, compare that to solar and storage, which is the cheapest new electricity on Earth and can be built in 12 to 36 months, not 12 years. Utilities, they do the math, spend billions and wait a decade, or build faster, cheaper solutions that show up now. I mean, the economics are brutal for fossil fuels. They just straight up lose. And today's grid problem isn't baseload, it's peaks, heat waves, cold snaps, evening ramps, and now massive AI workloads. Coal and combined cycle plants, they're built to run continuously, not to respond to chaotic, short-duration peak events. Yes, we do have gas peaker plants, but they're expensive, inefficient, and rarely used, and they're not being built fast enough to matter anyways. So what actually handles peaks? Solar, battery storage, behind-the-meter generation, demand response, and microgrids. These are fast, flexible, and scalable. Fossil is slow, rigid, and expensive. What about reliability? Well, let's look back at every major grid failure of the last decade, and the pattern is pretty impossible to ignore. Texas in 2021, California heat waves, Midwest polar events. What failed first? It was fossil fuel plants. In Texas, they try to blame it on clean energy, but the fact is, gas supply froze up and gas plants dropped offline by the gigawatt. Coal piles, they froze solid. Turbines, locked up. Even plants that stayed online were derated because of extreme cold. In California's heat waves, gas plants tripped offline when the temperature surged, and many couldn't run at full capacity because heat reduces their output. And in the Midwest polar events, coal and gas plants were the largest source of forced outages. So the idea that fossil fuel is an always-on, ultra-reliable backbone of the grid, that's just not true. Now, this isn't about ideology. It's about speed. The only technologies that can show up fast enough to meet today's demand curve are solar, battery storage, distributed generation, microgrids. You can deploy these in months, not decades. In the time it takes to build one gas plant, we can build thousands of rooftop and community systems, gigawatts of storage, full microgrids, enough local generation to materially reduce grid strain. The fastest growing demand in history requires the fastest to build supply in history. Fossil fuels, they simply can't keep up. So the next time someone says, just build more gas plants, remember, they take too long, they cost too much, they struggle in extreme weather, and don't match the shape of modern demand. So in the next episode, we're breaking down another big argument, and that's nuclear. What's real, what's hype, and what isn't being told honestly. Spoiler, the timelines are even longer. So hit subscribe, turn on alerts, and stick around, because understanding how the grid actually works is the only way to understand how we fix it. We'll catch you next time.